A reading from the Gospel according to Matthew, the second chapter. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, Herod inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over a place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, the Magi offered the child gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The word of God for the people of God.
Every year in the first week of January, we get the Epiphany story from Matthew's Gospel. Magi from the east inquire about the location of the Holy Child because they want to pay homage to him. They set out, they follow the star, and upon reaching the child, they give gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Let's dwell with those Magi for a few minutes. The original New Testament Greek, the word is magoi, and in Latin, it's magi. Whether magoi or magi, we're talking about astrologers, people who study the skies for portents of significant events. They are not typically sought out by rulers for their wisdom or their counsel, and the Magi are definitely not kings. They are astrologers. They are expert stargazers. And they're kind of fringy, out there types who love to scan the night sky. The interaction between Magi and star in the night sky is what sets the whole thing into motion. Biblical scholar William Herzog explains the star this way. He writes, "The Star of Bethlehem was not necessarily an extraordinary celestial event, but an ordinary star seen through the extraordinary eyes of the Magi. They had eyes to see. They had eyes to see an extraordinary star seen through extraordinary eyes. The Magi take a chance, and they set out and they seek confirmation of the prophet Micah's words. Micah said, "For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." They see the star, they trust that it is their guide to Emmanuel, God with us. It's all pretty amazing. really. Now remember, the Magi were not Jews. They're Gentiles. And this is so important because the Magi are the very first Gentiles to recognize the coming of the Messiah. They experience the revelation, even though they're not Jewish. Their seeking and finding the baby Jesus exemplifies the radical inclusivity of Christianity. As Gentiles, their journey to the manger and their revelation at the manger opens the door for any and all to seek the Christ child. This paves the way for the spread of the Jesus movement among the early Christian community, which, was a ragtag mix of people anyway. Gosh, those Magi, they're savvy and brave, aren't they? They set out on a journey not knowing where it will take them, and they pay homage not to King Herod, but to the newborn king. The political and social ramifications of doing such a thing are not lost on the Magi. They are tremendously gutsy. They know very well the radical nature of their actions, their gift-giving, their devotion, especially as Gentiles, to the newborn king. And remarkably, knowing that they will likely face the wrath of Herod afterwards, still they are overwhelmed not by fear, but by joy. Overwhelmed by joy. And so while, yes, we all remember the Magi's gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, they are an essential part of the Epiphany story, I think it's even more important to remember that the Magi's journey was a daring one. It was a journey of trust that led to revelation and transformation. In this new year, in 2023, perhaps we could be more like the Magi. Perhaps we should be more like them. Savvy, brave, generous, journeying stargazers who trust, kindred spirits who are open to revelation and transformation. Each one of us could do that. All of us together could do that. Perhaps we could and should be more like them. Our conference minister, the Reverend Sherry Prestaman, wrote about Epiphany in her column this week in the conference's e-newsletter. Here's part of what she wrote. This week we travel with the Magi toward the brilliance of Epiphany's star. It prompts us to wonder how God might be newly revealed among us, what new journeys of possibility God might invite us to take. What hopes do we as church bring as the new year unfolds? I'm not asking what we're wishing for in some sentimental, saccharine sense. I'm not even asking what we might resolve to do in the year ahead. My question is more about the hopes we carry that are deeply rooted in faith. A hope that is grounded in faith is different from optimism or a simple wish. It is a future we imagine based on our trust that nothing is impossible with God. It is a profound longing to more authentically step into the vision God holds for us and for our world. Those are the words of Sherry Prestaman, our conference minister. I really appreciate how she gets at the meaning of the word epiphany. Epiphany can mean manifestation or revelation, appearance, or unveiling. It's a noun, but it expresses movement and dynamism. Maybe it's a verb-like noun, or maybe a noun with verby tendencies. You know how much I love grammar. Anyway, the point is, epiphany means something has changed, or something is changing. What was not seen, not heard, not felt, or understood is now being illuminated in a new way. So I return to Sherry's questions. How might God be newly revealed among us? And what new journeys might God be inviting us to take? There's excitement and there's trepidation in these questions. Embracing Epiphany is like being on a trapeze bar, letting go and trusting that you'll grab onto the next trapeze bar that God sends your way. Have any of you heard of a man by the name of Danon Perry? No. Well, I hadn't heard of him either until a UCC clergy friend shared some of his writing with me. Danon Perry's life was a series of remarkable trapeze acts until his death in 1996. He was a helicopter pilot in the U.S. Coast Guard. He spent a year each at the North Pole and the South Pole. Then he served on the faculty of the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. And Perry also survived a near-death experience on a deserted island. He lived with friends in the mountains of Northern California. He got married, and then he created this thing called the Earth Stewards Network with his wife, which was a way to work in international conflict resolution. It included work with Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland. And since 1990, the Earth Stewards Network has run the Israel-Palestine Listening Project, promoting Jewish-Israeli friendship. So with all of that in mind, Danon Perry's background in mind, as well as the Magi and the Starlight and the Christ Child in mind, I invite you now to listen to Danon Perry's essay that my friend shared with me. It's called The Parable of the Trapeze. Sometimes I feel that my life is a series of trapeze swings. I'm either hanging on to a trapeze bar swinging along, or I'm hurtling across space in between trapeze bars. Most of the time I spend my life hanging on for dear life to my trapeze bar of the moment. It carries me along at a certain steady rate of swing, and I have the feeling that I'm in control of my life. I know most of the right questions and even some of the answers. But every once in a while, as I am merrily, or even not so merrily, swinging along, I look out ahead of me into the distance, and what do I see? I see another trapeze bar swinging toward me. It's empty, and I know, in the place in me that knows, that this new trapeze bar has my name on it. It is my next step, my growth, my aliveness coming to get me. In my heart of hearts, I know that for me to grow, I must release my grip on this present well-known bar and move to the new one. Each time it happens to me, I pray that I won't have to let go of my old bar completely before I grab the new one. But in my knowing place, I know that I must totally release my grasp on my old bar. And for some moment in time, I must hurtle across space before I can grab onto the new bar. Each time I am filled with terror. It doesn't matter that in all my previous hurdles across the void of unknowing, I have always made it. I am afraid each time that I will miss, that I will be crushed on unseen rocks in the bottomless chasm between bars. I do it anyway. Perhaps this is the essence of what the mystics call the faith experience. No guarantees, no net, no insurance policy, but you do it anyway, because somehow to keep hanging on to the old bar is no longer on the list of alternatives. So, for an eternity that can last a microsecond or 1,000 lifetimes, I soar across the dark void. Perry concludes, I have come to believe that this transition is the only place that revelation and transformation occurs. I have noticed that in our culture, this transition zone is looked upon as a no thing, a no place between places. Sure, the old trapeze was real and that new one coming toward me, I hope that's real too, but the void in between, Is that just a scary, confusing, disorienting nowhere that must be gotten through as fast and as unconsciously as possible? No. What a wasted opportunity that would be. I have a sneaking suspicion that the transition zone is the only real thing. And the bars are illusions we dream up to avoid the void where the real change, the real growth occurs for us. Whether or not my hunch is true, it remains that the transition zones in our lives are incredibly rich places. They should be honored, even savored. Yes, with all the pain and fear and feelings of being out of control that may accompany transitions, they are still the most alive, most growth-filled, passionate, expansive moments in our lives. Transforming our need to grab that new bar, any bar, is allowing ourselves to dwell in the only place where change really happens. It can be terrifying. It can also be enlightening in the true sense of the word. Hurtling through the void, we just may learn how to fly. If Advent is a season of anticipating and preparing, and if Christmas is a season of celebration and wonder and awe, then Epiphany is a season of trusting God, hurtling through the void and learning how to fly. And so in this new year, my friends, let's be savvy. Let's be brave and generous like the Magi. Let's choose the star. Let's live into the Christ light. Let's travel together by another road. Let's fly. May it be so. Amen.